Under the punishing Texas sun, Highway 83 shimmered with heat, its endless stretch of asphalt winding through the rugged plains like a lifeline through a desert. Traffic had slowed to a reluctant crawl, not because of a jackknifed rig or a fender bender, but due to a far smaller, wilder force. A tiny bobcat kitten, no bigger than a house cat, standing defiantly in the middle of the road. Its spotted coat was caked with dust, and its wide, golden eyes flickered with a mix of fear and determination as it refused to retreat. Horns blared, tires screeched, and drivers leaned out their windows, but the kitten held its ground, a pint-sized rebel halting the flow of steel and rubber. Officer Lila Carver had seen her share of strange calls in her 11 years with the Texas Department of Public Safety, but this was a first. She dealt with stranded cattle, rattlesnake crossings, and even a rogue armadillo once. But a bobcat kitten playing traffic cop? That was new. As she pulled her cruiser to the shoulder and stepped into the furnace-like heat, her instincts told her this wasn't just a lost animal. The kitten's frantic pacing and the way it darted toward cars only to skitter back suggested purpose, not panic. When she approached and caught the glint of something metallic strapped to its hind leg, a small device with a blue tag, she froze. This wasn't a random wildlife encounter. Somewhere out there, beyond the dusty horizon, a mystery was waiting, and this little creature seemed desperate to lead her to it. What could a wild bobcat possibly be guiding them toward? Why did it linger as if begging for help? What started as a routine patrol shift was about to unravel into a life-or-death puzzle that would test Lila's instincts, challenge her understanding of nature, and leave an indelible mark on everyone involved. The sun bore down mercilessly on Highway 83, baking the West Texas countryside into a haze of mirages and dry scrub. Traffic had been moving steadily earlier. Trucks rumbling north toward Eldora, sedans cruising south to Marwood, their drivers oblivious to the drama unfolding just off the pavement. Lila adjusted her Stetson against the blinding glare, squinting at the dispatch notes flickering on her cruiser's screen. At 34, she'd built a reputation as a steady hand in a chaotic job, but wildlife calls rarely spiked her pulse. This one, though, felt different. The initial report, small aggressive animal disrupting traffic, had escalated with additional calls flooding in, painting a picture too odd to ignore. Dispatch, this is Unit 247, responding to the wildlife incident at Highway 83, mile marker 143. Take 3 minutes, she radioed, her voice calm but edged with curiosity as she eased off the accelerator. Roger that, Officer Carver. Heads up, we've got multiple reports now. Motorists say it's a juvenile bobcat, acting erratic, the dispatcher replied. Lila's brow furrowed. Bobcats didn't charge toward highways, they fled from them. Her mind raced through possibilities. Injury, hunger, disorientation. None fit. She spotted the commotion before reaching the marker. A cluster of vehicles parked haphazardly along the shoulder, drivers milling about, some filming with their phones, others gesturing wildly. With practiced precision, she pulled behind the last car, flipped on her lights, and stepped out, the heat hitting her like a physical shove. She adjusted her utility belt and strode toward a middle-aged man in a faded Houston Stars t-shirt, who seemed to be keeping the crowd at a safe distance. Afternoon, sir. Officer Lila Carver, DPS. What's going on? She asked, her tone steady. The man wiped sweat from his brow with a meaty hand. Ma'am, there's a baby bobcat over yonder, he said, pointing to the median. Been at it for a while, runs out, then pulls back. Nearly caused a wreck when a semi slammed its brakes to dodge it. Lila nodded, her trained eyes scanning the scene. Anyone try to approach it? Nope. Wild critter and all, he said, then hesitated. Thing is, it's actin' strange. Like it's trying to flag us down. Ain't never seen nothin' like it. Lila thanked him and moved toward the median, her hand resting lightly on her holster. She'd handled wildlife before. Coyotes with broken legs, deer tangled in fences, and knew a cornered predator, even a young one, could turn unpredictable. Then she saw it. The bobcat kitten, barely a few months old, its dusty coat blending with the parched earth. It paced at the median's edge, making short, desperate dashes toward the road before retreating as vehicles roared past. Lila kept her distance, studying it. This wasn't aimless wandering. The kitten's movements were deliberate, almost pleading. She raised her binoculars for a closer look, and her breath caught. A small device was fastened to its hind leg, secured with a blue tag that fluttered faintly in the breeze. This wasn't a wild animal, or not entirely. Her pulse quickened. She retreated to her cruiser and radioed the Regional Fish and Wildlife Office. Her voice clipped. "This is Officer Carver, Highway 83, mile marker 143. I've got a juvenile bobcat with some kind of tag or device on its leg. Requesting immediate assistance." Minutes later, a white pickup with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department logo rolled up. Dr. Elias Brandt stepped out, a wiry man in his 50s, his sun-leathered skin and sharp eyes betraying decades of fieldwork. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd wrangled alligators and tracked mountain lions. And if anyone could unravel this, it was him. "Dr. Brandt," Lila said, extending her hand. "Appreciate you coming out quick." "Call me Elias," he replied, shaking her hand with a firm grip. "A tagged bobcat? That's unusual enough to get me off my desk." Lila led him to the median, briefing him as they walked, their steps slow to avoid spooking the kitten. "There," she pointed. "See the device?" Elias lifted his binoculars, adjusting the focus with practiced ease. "Well, I'll be darned," he muttered. "That's not one of ours." "What do you mean?" "Wildlife Services uses neck collars for tracking. Standard design." "This is different," he said, lowering the lenses. "There's a blue marker attached. It looks almost like—" He trailed off, his brow creasing. The bobcat spotted them and, instead of bolting, edged closer, stopping about 30 feet away. It let out a small, urgent yowl, a sound that pierced the hum of idling engines, then turned and took a few steps toward the forest bordering the highway, glancing back at them expectantly. "It wants us to follow," Elias said, his voice tinged with wonder. "Like some kind of lassie?" Lila asked, half joking, half skeptical. "I know it sounds crazy, but in 25 years of wildlife work, I've never seen a bobcat do this," Elias replied. He squinted at the blue tag. "Can I borrow your binoculars? Mine aren't as good." Lila handed them over, and Elias focused intently. "There's a number. RW 7734. His face paled. "Lila, that's not a wildlife tag. It's an emergency location marker. Hikers use them in certain parks." "Why would a bobcat have a hiker's marker?" Lila asked, her police instincts kicking into gear. "Good question. Give me a sec." Elias stepped back to his truck, returning minutes later with a grim look. "I called the ranger station at Crimson Peak State Park. They've got a missing hiker, Jasper Tully, 42, experienced outdoorsman. Checked in for a solo hike but missed his scheduled check-in yesterday. And the marker? RW matches his initials. 7734 was his campsite registration." They turned to the bobcat, still waiting, its yowls growing more insistent. "This doesn't make sense," Lila said. "How does a bobcat end up with a hiker's marker?" Elias rubbed his chin. "Let's dig deeper." He pulled out his tablet, tapping through files. "Here, ranger records say Jasper Tully's a wildlife rehabilitator from Austin. Specializes in big cats." Lila's eyes widened as she studied the kitten with new understanding. "So this could be one of his rescues? Maybe he was tracking it for a rehab program." "Could be. But if that's true, why's the bobcat here and Jasper isn't?" The unspoken hung heavy between them. The bobcat, Luna, as they'd later learn her name, yowled again more forcefully and trotted a few steps toward the forest. Lila's decision came fast. "I'm following it. If there's any chance it knows where he is." "I'm with you," Elias interrupted. "If Jasper's hurt, we'll need supplies." He dashed to his truck and returned with a backpack, first aid kit, water, emergency rations, a standard search and rescue loadout. Lila radioed dispatch. "Potential missing person linked to the wildlife incident. Dr. Brandt and I are investigating. Requesting backup and search and rescue on standby. Copy, Officer Carver. Nearest backups 30 minutes out. Search and rescue notified. Staging until you confirm. Understood. Proceeding with caution. Will maintain radio contact. Luna, sensing their intent, turned and trotted toward the tree line, pausing periodically to ensure they followed. Never thought I'd be chasing a bobcat into the woods, Lila muttered, waving the bystanders back as they crossed the highway. Nature's got a knack for surprises, especially when humans meddle, Elias replied, a faint grin tugging at his lips. The forest swallowed them, the temperature dropping under a dense canopy of oak and juniper. Luna stayed 50 feet ahead, her spotted form flickering through the underbrush, always just visible enough to track. She's on a clear path, Elias observed. That's not normal. Wild bobcats, even rehabbed ones, hug cover. Lila nodded, her eyes sweeping the ground. Look, boot prints. Fresh. Elias knelt, brushing dirt aside. Good catch. A day old, maybe. Men's hiking boot, size 11 or 12. They pressed deeper, the bobcat's pace steady and unrelenting. About a mile in, the trees parted into a clearing, the undergrowth churned. Broken branches, flattened grass, and scattered belongings. A dented water bottle, a shredded backpack strap, and, most chilling, smears of dried blood staining leaves and twigs. Someone tore through here in a hurry, Lila said, her hand drifting to her sidearm. Or fell, Elias added, nodding toward a steep drop-off at the clearing's edge. Hidden until they drew closer. Luna had stopped there, pacing frantically, her yowls sharper now. She edged toward the drop, then looked back, her golden eyes locking onto them with unmistakable urgency. Lila and Elias exchanged a glance, then crept to the edge. Below stretched a 30-foot ravine, a thin stream glinting at its base. And there, half concealed by a fallen tree, lay a human form, crumpled, still but alive. Jasper Tully, Elias shouted. The figure shifted, raising an arm in a weak wave. He's alive, Lila said, relief flooding her voice. She grabbed her radio. Dispatch, we've located the missing hiker. Ravine, 1 mile east of Highway 83. Mile marker 143. Subjects alive, injured. Requesting immediate medical evac. Copy, Officer Carver. Search and rescue mobilizing. ETA 45 minutes. Lila assessed the ravine. It's steep but doable. I'll go first. I've got the supplies, Elias said, slinging the backpack tighter. They descended carefully, gripping roots and rocks for support. Luna, astonishingly, followed, picking her own path with feline grace, her small claws digging into the earth. At the bottom, they reached Jasper Tully, conscious but battered. His right leg was pinned under the tree, his face pale and slick with sweat, his breathing shallow from dehydration and pain. When he saw Luna approach, a faint, pained smile cracked his lips. Luna, he rasped. Good girl. The bobcat padded closer, nuzzling his outstretched hand with a tenderness that stunned Lila. Elias dropped to his knees, unpacking supplies, while Lila offered Jasper a sip of water and radioed a detailed update. Compound fracture, right tibia. Possible concussion. Dehydration. Elias reported, his hands steady as he examined the injury. Stable, but he needs out fast. Jasper, what happened? Lila asked, kneeling beside him. He took a shaky breath, wincing. I was tracking Luna. She's mine, part of my rehab program. She was ready for her final wilderness test before release. He paused, gritting his teeth. We were good until a storm hit. Lightning struck nearby. Luna bolted, natural instinct, but the strike loosened this tree. He gestured weakly to his leg. I was following her trail when it fell. Couldn't reach my beacon. Lost it in the chaos. So I clipped my location marker to her harness and told her to find help. Lila and Elias exchanged incredulous looks. You trained a bobcat to fetch help? Lila asked. Jasper managed a weak chuckle that morphed into a groan. Not exactly. Luna was orphaned young, raised around humans before I got her. Part of her rehab was associating roads with people. Safety when she's scared. Pride flickered in his eyes. I didn't know if it'd work. Hoped she'd hit the road and someone spot her tag. Luna settled beside him, her spotted flank pressed against his side, watching them with wary trust. That's unreal, Elias said, applying a makeshift splint. You turned her into a living SOS. I trusted her, Jasper said simply, his hand resting on Luna's head. The next hour blurred into controlled chaos. Search and rescue arrived with a stretcher and climbing gear, expertly freeing Jasper's leg from the tree's grip. Luna hovered nearby, her eyes tracking every move, but she didn't interfere. Lila watched, mesmerized by the bond between man and animal. It shattered every assumption she'd held about wildlife. As the team prepped Jasper for transport, he called out, his voice faint, Luna, someone's got to look after her. She's not ready for the wild yet. I'll take her, Elias said, stepping forward. Personal responsibility until you're back on your feet, Jasper. You've got my word. Relief washed over Jasper's face as they hoisted him onto the stretcher. Thank you, he whispered. Her carrier's at my campsite, Crimson Peak, Site 7734. We'll get it, Elias assured him. As the team hauled Jasper up the ravine, Luna tried to follow, her small cries echoing off the rocks. Acting on impulse, Lila knelt to her level. It's okay, girl. He's gonna be fine. You did good, real good. Luna's golden eyes met hers, sharp and piercing, as if weighing her words. Then, with a final glance at Jasper's retreating form, she sat, tail flicking, and waited. The story broke the next day. Man's life saved by Bobcat companion. Local papers ran it first, but it snowballed. National outlets snagging the tale of a rehabilitator rescued by the creature he'd nursed back to health. Luna became an overnight sensation. Her image, a dusty kitten blocking traffic, splashed across screens and pages. Weeks later, Lila found herself driving to the Austin Wildlife Rehabilitation Center where Jasper worked. The incident had lodged in her mind like a burr, and when her sergeant suggested a follow-up for community outreach, she'd volunteered without hesitation. The center sprawled across 20 acres of scrubland outside Austin, a patchwork of modern buildings and sprawling enclosures designed to mimic the wild. A young volunteer greeted her, leading her to a sun-drenched room where Jasper sat in a wheelchair, his casted leg propped on a stool, a stack of papers on his lap. Officer Carver, he said, grinning as he extended his hand. Good to meet you properly. Last time, I was a little preoccupied. Lila laughed, shaking his hand. Call me Lila. You handled a busted leg better than most handle a stubbed toe. Adrenaline's a miracle, Jasper said, chuckling. And knowing Luna pulled it off? Better than any drug. How's she doing? See for yourself. We're about to run her afternoon session. He wheeled himself out to a massive enclosure, where Elias was already waiting, clipboard in hand. Lila raised an eyebrow. Elias comes down twice a week, Jasper explained, catching her look. Says Luna's one of a kind, wants to study her rehab for a research paper. Elias waved them over. Lila, good to see you. You're just in time for the show. Inside, Luna prowled with fluid grace, her kitten fluff giving way to lean muscle. She'd grown since the highway, her frame hinting at the predator she'd become. She's getting big, Lila said. They shoot up fast at this age, Jasper replied, pride warming his voice. And she's thriving. That day didn't set her back. It's opened new doors in her rehab. Elias led them to an observation area within the enclosure. Luna spotted them instantly, patting over, her gaze locking onto Lila. She remembers you, Jasper said, surprised. That's unusual? Lila asked. Very, Elias cut in. Bobcats don't typically pick out humans unless they've had heavy contact. She's pegged you specifically. Lila felt a shiver of connection as Luna's eyes held hers. Sharp, golden, almost knowing. What's her future look like? Jasper and Elias traded a look. That's gotten complicated, Jasper said. Luna's case is rewriting the rehab playbook. Her mix of wild instincts and human savvy is rare. Standard protocol is minimizing contact, then release, Elias added. But her skills, her initiative, have some of us, me included, pitching a new idea. Jasper wheeled closer to the fence. We're launching a program, Wildlife Ambassadors. Animals that, for whatever reason, straddle wild and tame. They teach us about their species and boost conservation education. And Luna's your first? Lila guessed. She's perfect, Jasper said. Wild at heart, but bonded to humans selectively. After the rescue, people are hooked on her story. They watched Luna tackle a series of enrichment puzzles. Hidden treats, movable logs, her problem-solving razor-sharp. That rescue wasn't fluke, was it? Lila asked. You trained her. Jasper shook his head. Not like you'd train a dog. I worked with what she's got, instincts. Roads mean humans, humans mean help when she's spooked. The marker meant me. He grinned ruefully. It was a Hail Mary. Didn't know if it'd pan out. It saved your life, Lila said. And reshaped hers, Jasper added softly. The buzz from this funded our ambassador program for years. We're building a facility. Visitors learning about Texas wildlife through animals like Luna who can't fully go free. Speaking of buzz, Elias said, the governor's office called. They want you both at the State Conservation Gala next month. Special commendation. Jasper flushed. I told em Luna deserves it, not me. They said they can't pin medals on bobcats. Elias laughed. But her face is going on a new conservation license plate. Lila smiled, picturing that dusty kitten on Highway 83. Who'd have guessed it'd spark all this? As if reading her mind, Luna approached the fence, chirping. A soft, almost friendly sound. Want to feed her? Jasper asked, offering tongs with a chunk of meat. Lila hesitated, then took them, following Jasper's guidance. Luna accepted the offering delicately, then sat, eating calmly, her eyes never leaving Lila's. Never thought I'd get this close to a bobcat, Lila said. She's showing us wild isn't black and white, Jasper replied. It's a gradient. Luna's helping us map it. Months later, Lila stood among the crowd at the Texas Wildlife Ambassador Center's grand opening. Her department had tapped her as their rep, but she'd have come regardless. Luna's story had hooked her. The center was a marvel. Habitats blending nature and accessibility, plaques detailing each animal's journey. Injuries barring release, imprinting, or, in Luna's case, a mind too sharp to fit the wild-tame binary. Luna's enclosure stole the show. Rocks, trees, a burbling stream, all crafted to echo her natural world while letting her engage with researchers and educate visitors. Jasper, fully healed, led the ribbon cutting, recounting Luna's tale with quiet passion. When he credited Lila, he waved her to the podium. Officer Carver showed what compassion can do, he told the crowd. She didn't brush off an animal as insignificant. She saw intent where no one expected it. After, as visitors fanned out, Jasper took Lila to a private observation nook. Luna lounged on a rock, regal and unbothered by the gawking crowd. She's a star now, Lila said. More than that, Jasper replied. She's a voice for her kind. People see her, hear her story, they're funding conservation, protecting habitats. One bobcat's done more in months than years of old-school efforts. Lila watched Luna stretch, her eyes briefly meeting hers. Recognition, maybe. Do you ever wonder what she's thinking? Every day, Jasper said, smiling. But I've learned to let the mystery be. Luna proves animals aren't just echoes of us. They've got their own depth. As dusk fell, casting golden streaks across the center, Lila reflected on how a routine call had snowballed into this. For Jasper, Luna, herself, and the thousands who'd come to learn about the fragile dance between humans and wildlife. In 11 years on the job, she said, I've never had a case like this. Jasper laughed. Let's hope it's a one-off. Once in a lifetime's plenty. They stood in easy silence as Luna, once a frantic kitten on a highway, now held court with effortless grace. In the fading light, she padded to the glass where Lila stood, her golden eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, Lila felt that bridge again, wild and human, teaching each other. It was a fitting end to an extraordinary tale, and she sensed the start of something even bigger.